Welcome to Big Breaking News of America. Genesis episode 29. Character analysis, Joseph, Judah, and supporting figures in the Joseph narrative, Genesis 37:50. The Joseph narrative and conclusion, Genesis 37:50, conclude the book of Genesis with a cohesive, character-driven story that shifts focus from the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to Joseph, whose journey from betrayal to leadership in Egypt resolves familial divisions and ensures Israel's survival, preparing for the Exodus narrative, Exodus 1:15. Unlike the episodic patriarchal narratives, Genesis 37:50 presents a unified arc, framed by the Toledo generations of Jacob, Genesis 37:2, where richly developed characters drive the plot and embody theological themes of divine providence, teshuvah, repentance, and covenantal continuity. Joseph, the central figure, transforms from an arrogant dreamer to a humble vizier, while Judah's redemption arc elevates him to tribal leader. Supporting figures, Jacob, the brothers, Tamar, Asenath, Pharaoh, and Potiphar's wife, complement these arcs, humanizing the covenant and highlighting inclusivity, integrity, and communal identity. Rooted in the late Bronze Age and shaped by exilic concerns, the narrative's characters resonate across Jewish tradition, Christian and Islamic theology, and modern ethical frameworks. This analysis examines Joseph, Judah, and supporting figures, detailing their narrative roles, theological significance, Torah connections, interpretive traditions, interfaith perspectives, and contemporary relevance, demonstrating how they unify Genesis and bridge to the Torah's redemptive arc. 1. Joseph, from dreamer to covenant preserver. Joseph, the protagonist of Genesis 37:50, is a dynamic figure whose transformation from a favored but arrogant youth to Egypt's wise and forgiving vizier drives the narrative's theological and emotional core. His arc embodies divine providence, leadership, and chaste, loving kindness, fulfilling the covenantal promises, Genesis 12:1-3, and preparing for the Torah's redemptive vision. Narrative role and development. Youthful arrogance, Genesis 37:2-11, introduced at 17 as Jacob's favored son, born to Rachel, Genesis 30:24, Joseph's ornamented tunic, Genesis 37:3, and dreams of dominance, Genesis 37:5-11, spark his brother's jealousy. His tactless sharing of dreams, where sheaves and stars bow to him, reveals youthful hubris, setting up the conflict. His role as overseer, reporting on his brothers, Genesis 37:2, exacerbates tensions, portraying him as naive yet divinely chosen. Trials and growth. Genesis 37:18-39:20, betrayed and sold into slavery, Genesis 37:18-28, Joseph's descent into a pit, Genesis 37:24, and enslavement to Potiphar, Genesis 39:1, test his faith. His integrity shines in resisting Potiphar's wife, Genesis 39:7-12, how can I sin against God? But false accusations lead to imprisonment, Genesis 39:20. In prison, his empathy, Genesis 40:6-7, and dream interpretation, Genesis 40:12-19, reflect growing wisdom, with divine favor evident, Genesis 39 hours 21 minutes, the Lord was with Joseph. Rise to leadership, Genesis 41 146 at 30, Joseph's interpretation of Pharaoh's dreams, Genesis 41 136, and strategic planning, Genesis 41 33 36, earn him the role of vizier, Genesis 41 40 46, with Egyptian honors, Zaphanath Paneah, Asianath's marriage, Genesis 41 hours 45 minutes. His humility, crediting God, Genesis 41 hours 16 minutes, contrasts his early arrogance, marking maturity. His reforms, Genesis 47 13 26, save Egypt and nations, Genesis 41 hours 57 minutes, fulfilling the universal blessing, Genesis 12 3. Reconciliation and legacy, Genesis 42:50. Joseph's testing of his brothers, Genesis 42:44, reveals their remorse, Genesis 42:21-22, culminating in his emotional revelation, I am Joseph. Genesis 45:13, and forgiveness, God sent me before you to preserve life, Genesis 45:7-8. His care for his family, Genesis 47:1-12, and reassurance after Jacob's death, Genesis 50:19-21, reflect chaste. His burial request, carry up my bones, Genesis 50:24-25, reaffirms the land promise, fulfilled in Joshua 2400 hours 32. Theological significance. Joseph embodies divine providence, as his trials, betrayal, enslavement, imprisonment, lead to salvation, Genesis 50 hours 20 minutes, God meant it for good, aligning with Genesis covenantal arc and prefiguring the Exodus, Exodus 3:7-10. His leadership reflects covenantal responsibility, balancing justice, Genesis 47:13-26, and compassion, Genesis 45:7-11, modeling Torah virtues, Deuteronomy 6:5. His forgiveness, Genesis 45:4-15, and chaste fulfill the relational covenant, uniting the great nation, Genesis 12:2, and extending blessings to Gentiles, Genesis 41 hours 57 minutes. Psychological depth. Joseph's emotional journey, arrogance, despair, Genesis 40:14-15, and tearful reunion, Genesis 45:1-2, humanizes his heroism, reflecting resilience and empathy. His strategic testing, Genesis 42:44, suggests psychological complexity, balancing justice and mercy. His faith, Genesis 39:9, 41 hours 16 minutes, anchors his growth, offering a model of trust amidst adversity, resonating with exilic audiences facing displacement. Torah connections. Joseph's leadership prefigures Moses, Exodus 18, who balances governance and compassion, and the Torah's kings, Deuteronomy 17:14-20. His integrity, Genesis 39:9, echoes Torah holiness, Leviticus 19:2. His forgiveness, Genesis 45:4-15, informs the Torah's ethic, you shall not take vengeance, Leviticus 19:18, while his burial, Genesis 50:24-25, links to the Exodus, Exodus 3:8. His role as preserver, Genesis 45:7, foreshadows the Torah's communal vision, Exodus 19:6, uniting Israel for Sinai. Jewish interpretive traditions. Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah 90:3, views Joseph's dreams as prophetic, fulfilling God's plan, Bereshit Rabbah 89:2. The Talmud, Sota 36b, praises his resistance to temptation, Genesis 39:9, shaping halakhic ethics. The Zohar sees Joseph as Yesod, foundation, channeling divine blessing, Zohar, Vaishev 182a, with his trials purifying the covenant, Zohar, Vaichi 235b. Rashi emphasizes his providence, Genesis 50 hours 20 minutes, while Ramban sees his leadership as covenantal. These interpretations inform Parshiyo, Vaishev Vaichi, with Genesis 45:4-15 read in Salishot, shaping Musar teachings on humility. Interfaith perspectives. Christianity, Joseph's trials and rise prefigure Christ's suffering and exaltation, Acts 7:9-16, with his forgiveness, Genesis 45:4-15, shaping reconciliation theology, Matthew 6:14-15. Augustine's sermons cite Genesis 41 hours 16 minutes for humility, influencing Advent readings. Islam, Surah Yusuf, Quran 12:21-101, portrays Joseph as a prophet, with his piety, Genesis 39:7-12, and leadership, Genesis 41:40-46, reflecting divine favor, Surah Yusuf 12:55. Tafsir like Ibn Kathir's emphasize his Teshuvah, shaping 8 sermons. Contemporary applications. Joseph's leadership informs modern ethics, with Genesis 41:33-36 cited in Business Training, Forbes, 2025, and Governance, UN 2024 frameworks. His forgiveness inspires peace-building, Seeds of Peace, addressing polarization, Gallup, 2023. Jewish programs, Wexner Foundation, and Christian ministries, focus on the family, use Genesis 45 for leadership and reconciliation, while Islamic platforms, Yaqeen Institute, cite Surah Yusuf for integrity. Secularly, Joseph's resilience shapes leadership models, TED Talks, 2024, promoting empathy and purpose in crises. Cultural impact. Joseph shapes Jewish identity, Tefillah, Christian theology, sermons, and Islamic spirituality, Ramadan reflections, unifying Abrahamic faiths. Globally, he influences literature, Thomas Mann's Joseph and His Brothers, film, The Prince of Egypt, and ethics, embodying hope and redemption. To Judah, from betrayer to redeemed leader. Judah, the fourth son of Jacob and Leah, undergoes a transformative arc from moral failure to covenantal leader, complementing Joseph's role and establishing the Davidic line. His journey of Teshuvah drives the narrative's reconciliation and tribal identity. Narrative role and development. Initial failings. Genesis 37:38 Judah proposes selling Joseph, Genesis 37:26-27, revealing pragmatism but moral cowardice, prioritizing profit over kinship. His subplot with Tamar, Genesis 38, exposes further flaws, abandoning his daughter-in-law, Genesis 38 hours 11 minutes, and succumbing to lust, Genesis 38:15-18. His confession, "She is more righteous than I," Genesis 38:26, marks a turning point, acknowledging guilt and ensuring his line through Perez, Genesis 38:29-30. Redemption and leadership, Genesis 42:44. Judah's growth emerges in Egypt, where he guarantees Benjamin's safety, Genesis 43:8-9, contrasting his earlier betrayal. His impassioned plea to Joseph, offering himself as a slave, Genesis 44:18-34, showcases selflessness, prioritizing family unity. This act earns Joseph's trust, Genesis 45:1-15, and Jacob's blessing, Genesis 49:8-12. Tribal role, Genesis 49:50. Jacob's blessing, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah," Genesis 49:10, elevates him as leader, foreshadowing Davidic kingship, 2 Samuel 7. His role in Jacob's burial, Genesis 50:5-13, and submission to Joseph, Genesis 50:18, affirm communal harmony. Theological significance. Judah's teshuvah reflects divine grace, transforming a betrayer into a leader, aligning with Genesis' theme of redemption, Genesis 15:6, and preparing for Torah repentance, Leviticus 26:40-42. His leadership fulfills the covenant's great nation promise, Genesis 12:2, with his line ensuring Israel's continuity, Ruth 4:18-22, prefiguring the Torah's tribal structure, Numbers 2. His self-sacrifice, Genesis 44:33-34, models covenantal chaste, complementing Joseph's forgiveness and extending the universal blessing through Judah's legacy, Genesis 49:8-12. Psychological depth. Judah's arc reveals internal conflict, from callousness, Genesis 37:26-27, to guilt, Genesis 38:26, and courage, Genesis 44:18-34. His plea reflects emotional maturity, balancing duty and empathy, resonating with exilic audiences seeking restoration. His transformation humanizes the covenant, showing redemption through human effort, contrasting Joseph's divine favor. Torah connections. Judah's leadership prefigures David, 2 Samuel 7, and the Torah's kings, Deuteronomy 17:14-20, while his teshuvah echoes Yom Kippur, Leviticus 16. His plea, Genesis 44:18-34, foreshadows Moses' intercession, Exodus 32:11-14, emphasizing communal responsibility, central to Sinai's covenant, Exodus 19:6. His tribal role, Genesis 49:8-12, links to Numbers camp, Numbers 2, unifying Genesis with the Torah's structure. Jewish interpretive traditions. Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah 93:8, praises Judah's plea as teshuvah, meriting kingship, Bereshit Rabbah 97:8. The Talmud, Sanhedrin 6b, sees Genesis 38:26 as repentance, influencing halakhic ethics. The Zohar views Judah as Makhut, sovereignty, uniting divine attributes, Zohar, Vaichi 235b, prefiguring David. Rashi ties Genesis 44:18-34 to Torah redemption, while Ramban sees Genesis 49:8-12 as messianic. These interpretations shape Parshio, Vaishev, with Genesis 44 read in Salishot, fostering communal teshuvah. Interfaith perspectives. Christianity, Judah's kingship, Genesis 49:8-12, prefigures Christ's Davidic lineage, Matthew 1:16, with his teshuvah shaping repentance theology, Luke 15:7. Jerome's exegesis cites Genesis 44:18-34 for humility, influencing Lent readings. Islam, Surah Yusuf 12:80-87 depicts Judah's plea as loyalty, aligning with Islamic ethics of family, Surah Al-Hujurat 49:10. Tafsir like Al-Razes emphasize his growth, shaping fiqh principles. Contemporary applications. Judah's teshuvah informs restorative justice, with Genesis 44:18-34 cited by UN 2024 initiatives and NGOs like Prison Fellowship. Jewish programs, Musar Institute, use his arc for ethical growth, addressing polarization, Gallup, 2023. Christian ministries, Willow Creek, and Islamic platforms, Muslim World League, apply Genesis 44 for reconciliation, fostering community healing. Secularly, Judah's leadership shapes conflict resolution models, Oslo Accords Legacy, 2024. Cultural impact. Judah shapes Jewish identity, Haftarah, Christian theology, Messianic hope, and Islamic ethics, Ummah, unifying Abrahamic faiths. Globally, he influences literature, Anita Diamond's The Red Tent, art, Chagall's Judah, and social movements, embodying redemption and leadership. 3 supporting figures, Jacob, brothers, Tamar, Asenath, Pharaoh, and Potiphar's wife. Supporting figures, Jacob, the brothers, Tamar, Asenath, Pharaoh, and Potiphar's wife, enrich the narrative, complementing Joseph and Judah's arcs, highlighting inclusivity, and advancing covenantal themes. Jacob. Narrative role, Jacob, the patriarch, transitions from active figure, Genesis 25:36, to grieving father, Genesis 37:33-35, I shall go down to Sheol, and covenantal anchor. His favoritism, Genesis 37:3, sparks conflict, but his reunion with Joseph, Genesis 46:29-30, now I can die, resolves his arc. His blessings, Genesis 49, establish tribal identity, while his burial in Canaan, Genesis 50:5-13, reaffirms the land promise. Theological significance, Jacob embodies covenantal continuity, linking Abraham's promises, Genesis 12:1-3, to Israel's tribes, Genesis 49. His grief and joy reflect divine providence, preparing for Torah redemption, Exodus 3:8. Torah connections, his blessings prefigure Numbers tribes, Numbers 1:4, and Deuteronomy's blessings, Deuteronomy 33, while his burial links to the land promise, Exodus 3:8. Jewish interpretations, Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah 98:2, sees Genesis 49 as prophetic, with Rashi tying Jacob's reunion, Genesis 46:29-30, to redemption. The Zohar views him as Tiferet, harmony, unifying the tribes, Zohar, Vaichi 235b. Interfaith perspectives. Christianity links Genesis 49:8-12 to Christ, Revelation 5:5, while Islam views Jacob as Prophet Yaqub, uniting the family, Surah Yusuf 12:83-86. Contemporary applications. Jacob's grief informs pastoral care, focus on the family, 2024, while his blessings inspire community building, Shabbat, 2024. The Brothers. Narrative role. The brothers, driven by jealousy, Genesis 37:4, betray Joseph, Genesis 37:18-28, but show remorse, Genesis 42:21-22, we are guilty. Their transformation, submitting to Joseph, Genesis 50:18, reflects unity, fulfilled in tribal roles, Genesis 49. Theological significance. Their teshuvah models covenantal reconciliation, fulfilling the great nation promise, Genesis 12:2, and prefiguring Sinai's community, Exodus 19:6. Torah connections. Their unity foreshadows Israel's covenant, Exodus 19:24, with Genesis 49 linking to Numbers tribes, Numbers 1:4. Jewish interpretations. Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah 92:5, praises their remorse, shaping Selishot. The Talmud, Yoma 86b, cites Genesis 42:21-22 for repentance. Interfaith perspectives. Christianity sees their reconciliation as grace, Romans 5:8, while Islam views their remorse as Tawbah, Surah Yusuf 12:87. Contemporary applications. Their arc informs conflict resolution, UN 2024, with NGOs citing Genesis 45:14-15 for healing. Tamar. Narrative role. Tamar, Genesis 38, Judah's daughter-in-law, secures his line through agency, disguising as a prostitute, Genesis 38:14-18, to bear Perez and Zerah, Genesis 38:29-30. Her righteousness, Genesis 38:26, contrasts Judah's failings. Theological significance. Tamar's perseverance ensures covenantal continuity, prefiguring inclusive Torah figures, Ruth 4:18-22. Her agency reflects divine providence. Torah connections. Her role foreshadows Miriam, Exodus 15:20-21, and Torah inclusivity, Leviticus 19:34. Jewish interpretations. Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah 85:10, praises Tamar's piety, with the Zohar seeing her as Shekinah, Zohar, Vayishev 182a. Rashi ties her to David's line. Interfaith perspectives. Christianity links Tamar to Christ's genealogy, Matthew 1:3, while Islam views her as righteous, Tafsir al-Razi. Contemporary applications. Tamar inspires feminist theology, Jewish Women's Archive, 2024, promoting gender equity, UNSDG 5, 2015. Asianath. Narrative role. Asianath, daughter of the priest of On, Genesis 41:45, marries Joseph, bearing Manasseh and Ephraim, Genesis 41:50-52. Her integration reflects Egypt's role in the covenant. Theological significance. Asianath fulfills the universal blessing, Genesis 12:3, uniting Egypt and Israel, prefiguring Torah inclusivity, Leviticus 19:34. Torah connections, her sons' tribes, Numbers 1:32-34, link to the Torah's structure, echoing mixed marriages, Exodus 12:38. Jewish interpretations, Midrash, Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar 38, views Asenath as Dinah's daughter, preserving covenantal purity. The Zohar sees her as divine unity. Interfaith perspectives, Christianity sees her as Gentile inclusion, Ephesians 2:14, while Islam views her as faithful, Tafsir ibn Kathir. Contemporary applications, Asenath informs interfaith dialogue, Abrahamic Family House, 2023, promoting diversity. Pharaoh and Potiphar's wife. Narrative role, Pharaoh elevates Joseph, Genesis 41:40-46, reflecting divine favor, while Potiphar's wife tempts him, Genesis 39:7-12, testing his integrity. Both highlight Joseph's virtue. Theological significance, Pharaoh's trust extends the universal blessing, Genesis 12:3, while Potiphar's wife's failure underscores covenantal fidelity, prefiguring Torah holiness, Leviticus 19:2. Torah connections, Pharaoh foreshadows the Torah's Gentile allies, Exodus 12:38, while Potiphar's wife echoes moral tests, Deuteronomy 6:16. Jewish interpretations, Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah 89:2, sees Pharaoh's dreams as divine, with the Talmud, Sota 36b, praising Joseph's resistance. Interfaith perspectives, Christianity views Pharaoh as divine providence, Romans 8:28, while Islam sees him as guided, Surah Yusuf 12:43-54. Contemporary applications, their roles inform ethical leadership, Forbes, 2025, and interfaith ethics, UN 2024. Cultural impact. Supporting figures shape Jewish liturgy, Veichi, Christian exegesis, Acts 7, and Islamic storytelling, Surah Yusuf, unifying Abrahamic faiths. Globally, they influence literature, the Red Tent, art, Tissot's Tamar, and ethics, emphasizing inclusivity and integrity. For synthesis, characters as theological and narrative pillars. The characters of Genesis 37:50, Joseph, Judah, and supporting figures, serve as theological and narrative pillars, unifying the Joseph narrative and bridging to the Torah's redemptive arc. Joseph's transformation from dreamer to preserver embodies providence, Genesis 50:20, fulfilling covenantal promises, Genesis 12:1-3, and prefiguring Moses, Exodus 18. Judah's teshuvah from betrayer to leader establishes the Davidic line, Genesis 49:8-12, modeling repentance, Leviticus 26:40-42. Supporting figures, Jacob's patriarchal closure, the brothers' unity, Tamar's agency, Asenath's inclusion, and Pharaoh's trust, enrich the covenant, highlighting chaste and inclusivity. Jewish exegesis, Midrash, Zohar, deepens their significance, linking Genesis to Torah spirituality, while Christian and Islamic perspectives unify Abrahamic theology. Contemporary applications address leadership, reconciliation, and diversity, ensuring their relevance. As Genesis conclusion, These characters bridge ancient promises to Torah redemption, inviting all to engage their vision of faith, redemption, and community. Theological unity. The characters embody providence, teshuvah, and continuity, resolving Genesis conflicts, Genesis 37:18-28, and promises, Genesis 12:1-3. They prepare for the Torah's climaxes, liberation, Exodus 14, covenant, Exodus 19:24, and conquest, Joshua 1, framing Israel's mission. Narrative depth. Their arcs drive the plot, from betrayal to reconciliation, Genesis 45:4-15, transitioning from family to tribes, Genesis 49, setting up Exodus 1:7. Their psychological complexity humanizes the covenant, engaging diverse audiences. Cultural and interfaith resonance. The characters shape Jewish identity, Christian theology, and Islamic ethics, fostering dialogue. Abrahamic Family House, 2023. Globally, they influence literature, art, and ethics, addressing universal themes of redemption and unity. Contemporary relevance. The characters guide modern leadership, reconciliation, and inclusivity, fulfilling the Torah's call to be a light to the nations, Isaiah 42:6. 5. Conclusion. Characters as living covenant. The characters of Genesis 37:50, Joseph, Judah, Jacob, the brothers, Tamar, Asenath, Pharaoh, and Potiphar's wife, form the living heart of the Joseph narrative, embodying the covenant's promises and bridging to the Torah's redemptive vision. Joseph's leadership and forgiveness fulfill divine providence, Judah's teshuvah secures Israel's future, and supporting figures enrich the narrative with inclusivity and integrity. Enriched by Jewish exegesis, embraced by Christian and Islamic theology, and applied to modern challenges, these figures ensure Genesis 37:50's enduring relevance. From the late Bronze Age to the 21st century, they invite all to engage their stories of faith, redemption, and community, shaping ethics and hope in a pluralistic world. Thank you for watching Big Breaking News of America. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for more news updates. Share our channel with your friends and family members, leave a like for more videos and express your thoughts under comment section.